Are you ready to answer one of the most important questions you could ask yourself? This question could drive everything from your personal development to your practice marketing to how long people stay under your care. Well, I am Greg Venning. I'm your guide on the questing chiropractor, and today this is the question we're going to delve into. And in this thought-provoking episode, we delve into the transformative power of problems and how they shape our personal growth with our guest, Nimrod Mueller. Now, Nimrod is a polymath in the field of chiropractic. He has and does cover all aspects of the profession: successful practices, board positions, published research, formal education, much, much more. He's done it and he's still doing it. In his own words, he is absolutely dedicated to ensuring that chiropractors have a greater vision, a broader understanding and deeper connection, creating masterful results and an ever greater impact. We discuss the role of effective communication, the importance of prioritization in our lives. We touch on the role of chiropractic in personal development. This episode is amazing. It promises to change your perspective on comparison, on value, and on growth. Tune in for an enlightening conversation that will leave you inspired and moved. Don't miss out. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Questing Chiropractors podcast. We help you grow as visionary, vitalistic, and capable chiropractors who are always on. We do things differently as we help to elegantly awaken your innate wisdom within. We help you create robust, predictable, and trustworthy practices that serve oceans of people and yet still have free time for yourselves and your families. We use neuroscience to deliver better business results so that you can get greater, deeper, and more effective impact in more ways. We are Questing Chiropractors, and this is our story. Welcome to the Questing Chiropractor, the podcast where we help you to make sense of the chiropractic world within your own business, within your own life, and with each person you see. And with me today is Nimrod Mueller. Now, Nimrod has been introduced to you. He's an amazing person, an amazing chiropractor, a great coach, and he's played a role in so many different spheres of chiropractic. And Nimrod, first of all, welcome onto the podcast. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Greg. I'm excited to be here and see what unfolds.
Yeah. Unfolding is something that you talk about a lot, and I love this concept of unfolding. And what I'd like to discuss today is helping the listeners here to get very clear on the problem that they solve. And so the very clear question is, what problem do you solve? And the reason why I'm bringing this up and the reason why I want to talk to you about it is I was sitting down at a really nice hotel here in Cape Town probably about 10 years ago. And there was somebody who ran quite a big online community and did a lot of really good work, quite a visionary entrepreneur. And he sat with me, and he'd never really been exposed to chiropractic. And he asked me about the practice, and he asked me a few things. And then he said, Greg, I'm just not clear. Tell me, what problem do you solve? And I can remember sitting there and going, I can ask him on the level of a pain relief point. But we'd been seeing chiropractic as so much more than that. Chiropractic is so much more than an expensive painkiller. And we'd had that kind of conversation. And I remember being quite stuck in trying to clearly enunciate to him a vision of what problem we solve. And you've asked me so many clarifying questions in our relationships. And I know it's something that you've solved on a board level for different boards that function within chiropractic, in practices in your own practice. So tell me, like, when you hear this question, what problem do you solve for you personally? Where does this take you?
Yeah, it's such a great orientating question to kick us off. Did you say we've got a couple of hours to discuss this?
we can see how we go. Editing will see us through. Let's just go where it goes.
Yeah. First, I would define the term problem, solve, and you. And I think maybe in reverse order is the interesting way to do it. If I was to ask you, what problem do you solve? Are you thinking from your perspective, or are you thinking from the perspective of solving the problem for the person you're serving? Because I think there's a difference there. I wonder, maybe I can ask you a question and we can get to the answer there. If you think back to when your daughter Imogen was 2 years old.
Yep.
What would you say was one of her greatest driving motivations at that age?
So 2 years old. So my youngest daughter, so everybody knows, has a strong sense of will in life, and she came into the world like that. At 2 years old, she wanted a sense of autonomy. She was walking, she was moving around, and she wanted to play outside at any cost on every day.
Amazing. So there was this kind of primal drive to get out there. Yeah.
Yes.
What would have been some other of the primal drives that Imogen would have had it too?
So primal drives from the sense of wanting to play, also wanting connection and cuddles, and when she wanted them, she needed them. Food, safety, security.
Yeah. And then I wonder if you think about Imogen at 5, what would have been some of these great drives that she had at 5?
So she has a drive to try and read and write the same way as her sister, who's 3 years older than her. And it's an intense source of frustration for her that she doesn't do what her older daughter does, her older sister does.
Amazing. Yeah. And just jumping ahead a little bit, and then we'll come back to your question. If you think about a typical quester, it doesn't really matter. What would you say is one of their great drives?
So the chiropractors that we see as questers, these questing chiropractors, they often want to build robust businesses where they can do what makes their heart sing. They really, really want to be on fire with what they're doing. They want to change the world. We believe that every adjustment changes the world, one person, one moment at a time. And they want to be able to make a profit and enjoy the fruits of the value that they create in life.
Nice. So I just want to bring us back to a couple of things. Imogen at 2 and Imogen at 5, quite different drives. The Imogen at 5 transcends and includes some of those things, but now she's hungry to be just like her sister, and to get out there. She's realized that there's something about her sister that her sister can do that she can't do, and it's pulling her forwards in this direction. And then the quester, the chiropractor who comes to us, is quite different in terms of their business, their practice, and their own sense of fulfillment. So the question you asked me is relevant to the person sitting in front of us and where they're at in their life, right?
Yes.
Now, the interesting thing about this is when I ask you a question, just like when you ask me a question, it creates this kind of mental and soul-based gap, this space, right? And what do we do with that space? You immediately jumped in and filled it.
Yep.
Yeah. So when you ask a question, when I ask you a question, wonder what Imogen was like at 2 or at 5, or what a typical quester is like. It creates this space for us, this void, and this void gets filled with something, and that something is relevant to what we think is most important for us in our life. And so coming back again, what was that question that entrepreneur asked you?
Yeah, so we'd spoken a little bit about what I do and who we help. And then he said, Greg, but I'm just struggling to understand exactly what problem do you solve?
Yeah. And so by asking that question, Greg, what problem do you solve? He created a space for you to fill from your perspective at that time in your life. And now you're 10 years on with a lot of more experience. And I bet your answer would be quite different. But it's relevant to you and where you are. And that's what that space of that question is so beautiful about. And so now when you ask me, what do I think, what problem do I solve? I would say, well, who am I responding to? In whose framework are we talking about? From whose perspective? Where are they in their life? And who am I at this point in my life? And so if we look at, because you orientated us a little bit with the work that I've done with chiropractic, if we look at it from chiropractic level, I think that there's different ways we can look at this. We can look at a really kind of symptomatic way. We just want to, as you said, numb a pain. And that can be with someone in our practice, and it can also be on the political level, right? There's something is hurting us and we just want to numb it. Or we can rise up above that and look at functioning better. So it's not just about, my neck pain, or it's not just about how chiropractic is getting beaten down, but it's actually about functioning at a higher level. My autonomics come online. I start to ingest things well and grow and develop. And again, there's a good parallel there with the profession. And then beyond that, there's a level of high-level performance that is almost driven by our soul. And so it's not just about symptomatic and function, but it's actually about coming alive and meaning and fulfillment And this is where we expand as much as possible into every realm. And by doing so, we contribute in a highly impactful way. And again, this is for the individual chiropractor speaking to an individual person, and for our profession as well, and everything in between, our business, our community, our state, our country, the galaxy, everything in through there. And so I would tag that answer.
It was the business level there that I think most of the people listening to this will also be interested in is, are you in a state where you just need cash flow and you're living almost from hand to mouth?
Yeah.
Are you in a point where your business is growing, there's some robustness, you have some reserves, and at your place where are you contributing to society through this enterprise and making the world a better place?
Yeah. The way I like to tag that last one is a quote I read, and I actually don't know the source, but it's making a dent on the universe.
Yes.
And I just love that. Whenever I have to think about it quickly, that high level one is my endeavors, my practice, being entrepreneurial, making a dent on the universe. And we can do that in different ways.
I think it was Steve Jobs that spoke about making a dent in the universe. I remember him having a conversation. He recruited the guy who was CEO of Pepsi at the time, and he said, you can either make sugar water over there or you can come over here and make a dent in the universe.
Yeah, I love it. And, there's different ways to state that same thing. But it leads us to curiosity of what dent, what universe, and who am I? And I think these sorts of questions, again, just like I asked you, they create that space that we fill with who we are and who the person is relating with us right now.
So for our listeners out there, let's try and play with three levels of this. So how would you help them to begin answering the question for themselves? And let's think about them in their business first. Where would they start to answer this question of what problem do I solve, which we know kind of leads people to start thinking about their purpose of their practice, starting by identifying the problem?
Yeah. So let's just unpack this for a couple of minutes. I know we're not going to get too abstract or heady about this, intellectual. But if you ask what problem do I solve, then again, I would define the terms. And the first term, apart from me, which is an interesting one, is the problem. And the problem that we have, just like Imogen had a different problem at 2 or at 5, or the Quester has, it relates to the perceptions that we have around what I may be lacking or missing in my life. And again, it's a perception. We could unpack that for hours. But it's the belief I have of what I'm doing right now that is driven by what I perceive I'm lacking. And I'm lack it because my sister, who's 3 years older than me, can write beautifully, or because someone doesn't do something as well as I think they should. And so both of those perceived lacks drive me forwards and create a problem for me to solve. So the problem at a business level is related to who I am individually. And the who I am individually is expressed for us chiropractors through chiropractic most of the time. And so that then comes to, well, what problem am I solving in relation to who I am as a chiropractor doing chiropractic? And I think this is where so much of our richness comes through. And so you asked, how would I help an individual quester or non-quester move forwards on this? This is where I would start. What does this mean for you, the problem of being a chiropractor and doing chiropractic? Is it something where you are wanting to being an analgesic and numbing out a symptom of pain, something that the body is communicating to us? Or is it about allowing this person's intelligence to express more fully and their life to expand in unbelievably unknowable ways? And there's no judgment on either, but we have to get clear on where we sit for ourselves with this problem of chiropractic. And so this is definitely would be my starting point. I would task someone with defining that clearly and deliberately and explicitly for themselves in a very empowering way.
And you bring up something there, the concept of comparison, because so many times within the people that we serve, the chiropractors we serve in their businesses, and our practice members, the people we serve, will do the same thing. We do this personally for ourselves, is we play the comparison game of where I am versus where my colleague who graduated at the same time and their business is doing this and I'm still an associate or I'm just here.
Yeah.
If somebody's playing the comparison game, and maybe only you're listening now and you realize you're playing the comparison game, what kind of prompt could we give that would move them in a maybe more useful inside out direction rather than the comparison outside in direction there?
We're human beings, and the first part of that is human, which is material. And so there is no escaping the comparison game from, our epigenetics, our genetics, the zygotes of the sperm and ovum coming together. There's always comparisons from the very beginning. And so I think the first step is appreciating the beauty and power within that. And the way that discord or disharmony creates a gap that drives us forwards. And so, if we jump forwards a few years to kind of the age Imogen is at, or a little bit older, where our rational mind comes online, we can start to see ourselves doing this. And so coming back for ourselves to those deep, profound comparisons that drive us forwards, what we would relate to as voids creating our values, then it's a matter of appreciating that and loving ourselves for what they are. And then the second part is prioritizing them. So when we don't live our life according to the priorities of our most motivating voids and then values, we get distracted by shiny objects, by things that just gratify us in the moment, by a million and one things. And this world is great at those distractions. And so my two steps would be appreciate that as humans, we have comparisons that drive us. It's useful to love ourselves for those comparisons. And the more I can know myself consciously and prioritize those comparisons, those voids, those values, it becomes useful for me in driving me forwards to create the life that I want to create.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I hadn't really considered that you could use the comparison to delineate your own value. So the external perceived void, even from another, that contrast will help you to clarify the value that you're inspired by most.
Yeah, let me give you a really quick example. So I grew up in Israel and came to Australia and couldn't speak a word of English. And when I entered school, my teacher at the time absolutely hated my really heavy accent and demanded that my parents put me into a lot of after-school care to improve my English and especially my speech, my accent. And I think as a result of that, I've been absolutely passionately driven to communicate well. And I think I'm improving my communication, and there's parts I do well and there's parts I could improve. But that drive from an early age, that comparison, is really a gift when we see it in that way. And again, we have to know which ones serve us well and are high priority ones, and which ones can distract us along the ways, because there's many of those. But the comparison, the gap that's created there, that disharmony, is a gift. It's the way life is expressing through us.
I often think of it like a charge. You've taken a polarity that didn't exist yet. You've taken a neutral point in space-time, and you've pulled apart these two charges, these two polarities, and in between that, there's tremendous energy stored in that. And it's that energy that then drives our human action. And it's that void that then drives that value.
Absolutely.
I think a useful place to go next, and getting really granularly tactical here, is how do we make sure that we are on track with the people that we serve, our practice members, to make sure that we are solving problems for them, and knowing what problem we're solving. Are we solving a superficial problem? And like you said, define problem. A superficial problem, a medium problem, or are we getting to some of the deep core problems they may have in their life and offering them chiropractic as a way for them to self-actualize themselves towards that? How would we orientate ourselves with people with that to make sure that we're continually serving them on the deepest level possible?
So, let's use the analogy you just did. If that void, that gap is charges pulled apart and it creates a lot of energy, then perhaps no problem is a small problem and no problem is a big problem. They're all just charged problems. And if we start with our own centering, what is my problem that I'm looking to drive through my life, and that itch I can't scratch for the rest of my life? What is that void that relates to chiropractic? Then that gives us a roadmap of where we want to go with people. And the more we take people on that journey towards that fulfillment, if for me it's to raise an expansive level of consciousness through the multiverse, then the more I can take people towards that, the larger their problems become and the greater we are solving those large problems as well. If my vision and mission and purpose through chiropractic is to numb pain, which is fine and valid, then the more that I align people with those problems, the more that I am solving the problem at that level, at that stage, at that level of expansion. And where this marries is, as you just suggested, when I'm solving a problem for someone else, there is someone else in the room. And so that relationship becomes really important. And so now it begs us to ask a question that creates curiosity, that illuminates the void, the problem for the other person. And so where we get to be really effective communicators is where we can sit with someone else and ask them about their worlds, their worldview, their values, their voids, the way they orientate themselves through their world and probably have since they were born, and what the problem is they're trying to solve. So I think there's some beautiful communication we could unpack there. And maybe to give a really quick example, I did a revision yesterday, which was the fourth revision with a woman who's in her 60s. When she first came in, she's a professional chef. She has been since she was 15. She had a lot of neck pain, some shoulder problems, those typical things we can think of as chiropractors symptomatically. Her body beautifully resolved the majority of those. So she gained energy and the ability to cook again and to lead her restaurant. And as she did so, she noticed that her body was functioning differently as well in terms of some hormones and some respiratory stuff. Yesterday in the re-exam, she turned around to me and she said, those problems, I just don't need them resolved anymore. But I'm kind of feeling lost in life. I don't know what the next chapter is going to look like for me. And I don't know if I should keep living my life in the same way that I've always been living it. And so here is a beautiful example of where a new void appears that maybe is a deeper one. It doesn't discount the ones she was trying to resolve earlier, the problems that she and I were collaborating to try and solve. But it's just a transcend and include, a new chapter, a new opening, a new expanse by a new level of curiosity that happens. So I think there's no small problems and they're all relevant. And it's about our communication and how we ask the questions of wonder and curiosity.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It brings to mind a couple that I looked after when I worked in Scotland, and they came to me sitting in the initial consultation, and I was maybe 4 or 5 years out of varsity, and I was used to people coming with symptomatic issues and then trying to delve deeper and see what was the deeper value behind the symptomatic issue. And this husband and wife sat in front of me and they said, we've been under chiropractic care for the last 40 years and we're here to interview you. We've just moved country and we're here to see whether you're the person who's going to take us on to our next level where chiropractic is part of our lifestyle. And again, it's just a completely different set of challenges and voids that you're there to solve. And you're being called, well, I was being called in that moment to raise my game up to their level of vibration and their level of calling, rather than often we see it the other way around. But it goes both ways, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think the relating of two individuals and maybe more brings about emergence in a way that is beautifully unpredictable. And so that's why I think, with us in Quest, one of the first questions we love to ask in a first consult is, how could we help you? And those words, I think, are so powerful because it opens that relationship of discovery and exploration and taking in the other and seeing the possibilities for collaboration, for problem solving or not, and for alliance as we assist and work together.
And for everybody listening, there's a great distinction to be made with what Nimrod just gave you there. Is it's not how can we help you today, which then posits the problem at a very short-term problem. It's how can we help you? It's a very big, open and expansive space. And they might start with today. And if you let them delve deeper into it, they will usually give you much more value and a much more expansive way that they're wanting to be helped, that they'd love your service to help them on.
Yeah, I'll make a slight little improvement on your words, Greg. You said, how can we help you? I would suggest, how could we help you?
Okay.
Which is more expansive and curious and wonder of possibilities.
Yes. Yeah, more possibilities than probabilities there by changing that around. Yeah, I love that. Now, Nimrod, you are one of the pilots here with us at Quest. And so for Quest and Chiropractors, one of the places we invite you to join us is in our free chiropractic Facebook group. where we provide free information, free training, free videos, free downloads, as well as invitations to some of our events. And we'd love to have you in the Quest Chiropractic community. This is where you'd be able to see more of Nimrod and the other Quest coaches providing value to you. So we invite you to that. And one other ask before we're finishing up today is please make sure that you like and rate this podcast, subscribe to it wherever you get your podcast, and wherever you have this, there'll be a way for you to reach out to us. If this is a video that you're watching, please, on the links below, type us a question. Let us know what you want to know about what problem you solve and voids and values and how it relates to your practice. Any other topics you'd like covered in the future, please pop those in the links below as well. And Nimrod, as we finish up here and we're wrapping up, I'm still interested. What problem do you solve?
Maybe there is no problem. My greatest drive in life is the expansion of consciousness at all levels, in all stages, and all realms. And that's a drive for me that allows me to explore with wonder and curiosity. And the more I do, the more I realize it doesn't really matter. It's not a problem to be solved. It's just a fun game to go along the way.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. That is a perfect place to finish this for this episode. Nimrod, thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and your love and your beautiful communication to us today. We really appreciate you having you here, and we will certainly be having you back.
Well, thank you very much, Greg, for doing this and for helping others solve problems. And I guess leaving the listeners with one question: how could we help?